All right. Thank you for being here. So I asked for this meeting just to touch base with all the clinical course coordinators where I thought there might be an opportunity to start to integrate clinical judgment specifically in clinical requirements. I think it's a really good opportunity in clinical to do this. And so I talked a little bit with Minnie already about ways we can do it in community, but it's really med surg and specialty courses and 425 where I thought that, we could do a lot. So I'll share really quick one thing that I suggested for med surg. And then I was going to ask Jay if, oh, he's going to be coming in. So we made some revisions to the clinical packet for med surg, and I was going to see how that's going. Oh, hi, Missy. Yay, I'm glad you could make it. Thank you.
I'm sorry. Did this just come up or did I miss?
I don't know. I sent a doodle out, or Devin sent a doodle out at the beginning of the semester for this.
Okay.
So
it just popped up and I'm like, I didn't even know I had a meeting. So sorry. I have no makeup on, no nothing.
You're beautiful. No, I appreciate you coming in, and I don't think it's going to take very long. I was just telling Nicole that I wanted to touch base with clinical course coordinators to see what ideas we might be able to come up with to start integrating clinical judgment model into clinical requirements, like the paperwork in particular. And for 313 clinical, we made some revisions, and Jay's going to be joining us. He's coming in right now. So I was going to ask him for an update on how it's going, but I thought maybe I would share the screen really quick to show you guys what the differences were. So basically what it is instead of the nursing care plan, we did this. So here's one that is completed. Can you see it where it says medical record finding, recognized cues? Okay. So this is one where it's completed. And so instead of having nursing diagnosis, goals, interventions, evaluation, this is what we're doing instead. And they can get all of this. And the nice thing about this, they can get the majority of this information from the medical record during, pre-patient pickup or whatever the process is used in the courses. So for this medical record finding, here's their HPI. Okay, so then rather than them just copying that down like they tend to do, they now have to go through this process and answer these questions. So what cues are relevant, which are irrelevant? And so that's recognized cues. And then analyze cues. What could they mean? Having them explain what they think that these findings mean. And then prioritize hypotheses, what's most important and what things do they need to be thinking about. And doing that same process for each aspect of the medical record. And you could tailor this however it would be appropriate for the particular clinical course. But if I kind of just go through here, you can see how the major aspects of, subjective portion of like an H&P or an admission note is addressed. And in particular, the review of systems we have found is a really kind of rich source of information where they can work through these thinking processes. So if they were to just go through each system, going through these subjective findings, denies fever, unintentional weight loss, reports generalized weakness and fatigue. So then, from all of this information, what is it that is relevant? They list what's relevant, what's of immediate concern in this column, and 100% this could be formatted better so it's easier, to read, and probably repeating headings and things like that would be really helpful. And then again, what does it mean? What are the priorities? Assigning their priority rank kind of to these areas. And Same thing again with the physical exam. They can do that same exact process, as well as diagnostic tests. So this would be all part of pre-patient care. And then the day of clinical or during patient care, they again can get information from the medical record as well as from what they're doing during those patient care processes. So this part, assessment, so we know this is the diagnoses when they're in the hospital. They could list those there, and then here's the remaining cognitive skills: generate solutions, take action, evaluate outcomes. So based off of the assessment and based off of the plan, what nursing interventions do you need to plan, and have them list them out. And then these two columns here are really kind of after they take care of the patient. So what actions did you take? And then what was the evaluation of those actions? So, and this just kind of, this was a lengthy example, right? I do think that with the complexity of the patients that they take care of, that it could be potentially lengthy, but I would see this as replacing. So we definitely would want to subtract something from the current care plans that we use. This is a way to integrate the cognitive skills with the medication research that we have them do. And so you can see here, so recognize cues is really, as long as they know what medication they're on, they're recognizing cues. And then if they're going further to determine safe dosage, route, frequency, the reason, then that addresses analyze cues. And then nursing considerations, that's prioritize, hypothesis, generate solution, take action. And then follow up is take action, evaluate outcomes. And then this is how we could expect them to fill these out, which is really something that they already do. But by drawing their attention to the cognitive skills for each aspect, I think will be helpful for them, because we definitely want them, just like they're aware currently of assessment, nursing diagnosis, implementation and so forth, or plan implementation, whatever. We want them to be aware of this as well. So, and then lastly, a medication interaction table is another thing that hits on almost all of the cognitive skills in one way or another. So it was just kind of another recommendation that I had that I shared with Jay and some of the clinical instructors in 313. So that's really where we're at with the clinical paperwork aspect of this. And oh, Lisa's coming in. Hey, Lisa, we weren't sure if you were going to be able to come.
Well, I got notification that it was canceled. Oh. And then I saw your email pop up, and then I was like, oh shoot, it's 11:13. So my apologies.
No, I don't know why that happened. Sorry about that. But thank you. Thanks for coming in. I was just going over some of the things that we have been working on in 313 with the clinical paperwork. You were on some of those emails early on in the semester, and I know that for 305 you were planning to, or you made some modifications to your care packet to integrate the cognitive skills, is what I recall. So
correct.
I just went through that with them. Go ahead.
Our students haven't gone to clinical yet. Next week's their first week, so
okay,
we're going to see how they do with that paperwork. But yes, I did put in all of the new the clinical judgment model instead of the nursing process into their care packet.
Okay, great. Good. Well, if you want to just keep everybody in this group posted on how that goes, and just any general thoughts that you have as they're starting to think about it for their courses, that would be really helpful.
Can I also ask, can we get level 1's paperwork and Jay's paperwork emailed to us? Because it might be nice to see kind of what they're doing level 1, how they're moving it to level 2, and then we can either, build on it, or, I know 401 is going to kind of be the focus in level 3, but for the specialties, we could kind of see, what they're doing and either build or kind of
Yeah,
read some of
absolutely.
the stuff.
Absolutely. And like I said, what we did for 313 was just a very rough draft to kind of like pilot this in a way to see how it works, and definitely can be in a much better form. So I think that as we're all working on this, and maybe even a Google Drive would be a good idea. Why don't I put together a Google Drive and have everybody on it, so that way we
I
can
think that's a
forward
really
each course.
idea, Angie, to have a Google Drive, and coming from this really big and exemplar that's very detailed, which is really good. We could probably start to pick up like one or two problems that makes it like an exemplar, a simpler one. We can build upon, so that we could start using that. And to expound on it, I'm even wanting to change some of my slides now in lecture after this has been approved or carried over. That instead of saying symptoms, signs and symptoms of, I could start using even in my lecture the lingo in there,
Yeah.
pertinent data, so.
Jay, I think we lost you. Can you hear us, Jay? Well, while he's trying to get back in, I think that would be a good idea. And what I would love would be some student exemplars, like once they've used the revised versions of the paperwork, to see, what's working, what's not working. I think we could put those in the Google Drive as well.
I think for me, I don't know, my course is kind of the unicorn here because I don't have sick patients. Like every other course, patients are hospitalized because they have an illness. We're treating something. I have healthy people that are hopefully going to the hospital and having healthy people.
Right.
So this may work out to be really great for my group as well, because my students do struggle with their care plans, because when we look at nursing diagnosis are written for sick people. And so we have to be extremely creative in trying to find something to make that healthy baby or that healthy mom fit into. And where in the rest of our courses, we really frown upon them using a lot of risk for diagnosis. OB is kind of all risk for, unless something actually happens. So I did like the concept in that example that you were showing of, we're not going with that nursing diagnosis. We're going with actually what's going on at the time.
Yeah.
And so in labor and delivery, especially, I think that would work out amazing, because, then they're really having to focus on what's happening, what's the potential of what's happening, and what could our interventions be, or what interventions are we going to do to keep that potential problem from happening.
Right.
Health
promotion and risk prevention. Go ahead, Jay.
Yeah, and if I have to also share, and I do agree with what Messi has been sharing. In fact, if I could share a little bit of background, when I was in NPLEX, and as early as 2017, we actually decreased now and eliminated nursing diagnosis question. The nursing process is still there, but nursing diagnosis has been slowly eliminated as early as 2017. We don't put nursing diagnosis question in NPLEX by then. So that's very relevant that we're doing this, Angie. And that's what Messi has been sharing. That's really true. In fact, I'm trying to eliminate now my nursing diagnosis question in my 3.
Thank you. That's great. So it sounds like overall we're feeling pretty good about making some modifications in this direction. Does anybody have any reservations in doing that? None. Okay, so then I think what we can do, just moving forward, I'll put this Google Drive, I'll get this going, and I'll create folders for each course, and I will put in what's there for 313, and then Lisa, if you could put in what you have for 305, and then we can just start working on this. And in terms of timeline, would it be feasible, do you think, to have something new that we can try out across all of the clinical courses for fall? Yeah, okay. Perfect. And then from there, what I'll ask is for you guys to, as you're using it, to maybe grab a couple of examples from students, remove their names and all of that, ask them permission, all that stuff, that we can use as completed examples. And what we're going to end up finding is that we have really authentic clinical scenarios, I think, that we could even use to develop items. So that's kind of a goal here, is to be able to repurpose that as much as we can. So
Angie, okay.
No, go ahead, Jay.
Okay, just really quick question. Angie, when you put it in the Google Drive, is it possible that you could also include a blank form of that, so that if you allow, I could also make a 313 kind of exemplar in a simplified format, following all the instruction or following all the aspects, but putting a 313 level way of thinking and the disease process that we covered, just like an exemplar that I could share later on to the student as they build up and learn this process.
Yeah, I think that's great, because the example we have now is very, very detailed, and so a simplified version would be good to have that one too.
Yeah, so that at least in the first time when we introduce it really in use, it doesn't sound so overwhelming. But that's a really good detailed example, because for us, because we have a bigger, at least understanding, right. And then if we could simplify it in our course and make it as our exemplar, for the student, for them to build up.
That's perfect. Yeah, that sounds really good, Jay. Thank you. I'll do that. Lisa, what you got?
I guess, what's the expectation for the clinical paperwork? Because from, kind of dabbling in peds and in Gero, the level 1 clinical paperwork is exceptionally different. And I know Missy can say that. I mean, it's long, but I don't know how else to kind of make it. I've tried to really simplify it for the students' sake, because they're just spending hours on it. But the amount of information that I'm asking, they don't know any different. So I want it all out there on paper to say they've done their due diligence in preparing for clinical, just because they're coming from nowhere, as opposed to level 2, 3, and 4, they've at least had these, stepping stones. So what are we really looking for with the clinical paperwork is my first question. Second question is, part of the book bundle is still having them buy the Ackley Nursing Diagnosis Handbook, because it's still in their textbook. So are we continuing to teach them that till it's completely, moved out of their resources? Or should I keep it, or should I start to eliminate it? Because it's still in their textbook.
So I'll take the second one first. So for NCLEX purposes, it's not going to be there, but in nursing, the conversations have been that nurse educators on a national level don't want to let go of it. I think that this is a great conversation for UPC, because I would support moving away. I think it's too linear and too basic, and it doesn't support them in their thinking. But I wouldn't want to be the only one weighing in on that decision. And so I think that is a fantastic agenda item to bring to UPC and even to the BSN meeting, so that you can get other faculty's perspectives on that. I think that, there are programs that are doing away with it and programs that are still holding on to it. So I would say have those conversations, and then as course coordinator, make a decision on what you want to do for your course. And then I would say same goes for the clinical paperwork. I think that especially in level 1, as you say, it's that gives us something to go off of for, have they prepared and are they safe? But really that doesn't establish safety just because it's written down. You know what I mean? So I think the best thing to do is to try to get to a place where what it is that we're requiring them to do required them to think. And the copying and pasting, we got to move away from that. So however you want to adjust so that they can demonstrate to you that they're thinking, they're more likely to be safe in that scenario. But I'm curious what others think about that.
So I don't know necessarily how, I'm sure it could be tweaked to be applied to level 1, but in level 3, because of the OB, you know, I can't like send them the day before to pick up a patient, you know, anything like that. We have preclinical paperwork that they have to do. It's literally one sheet that they fill out. The average student tells me it takes them about 40 minutes to do it. And it's got some of the most common meds that we would use, like for if I have a student that's in labor and delivery, they have to do their labor and delivery sheet. It's got 3 of the most common meds that we use in labor and delivery. They have to, you know, give me their names, their classifications, kind of like a mini med card. And then at the bottom of it, of this paper, it has 5 different complications that we could see with a patient. And then they have to give me like what could predispose that patient to those complications. And they have to turn it into me before they ever step on the floor in labor and delivery. So I know that they've at least done a little bit of investigating as to what potentially could happen, what meds they might have to give, rather than like, you know, from level 1, I mean, they almost had like a full care plan pretty much filled out until, you know, before they even go in.
Yeah,
so
it's different. It's different than that now. All that stuff that you mentioned on their preclinical sheet is a part of their clinical paperwork now. What sort of complications am I on the lookout for? What labs are most important for this particular diagnosis and why? I mean, it's changed quite a bit, but it's still a pretty heavy lift. However, they're only doing 3 of them because we do the AM/PM model. So they have 6 weeks, 3 on AM, 3 on PM, and the PM, they do a reverse case study. And then they do an assessment on whatever patient they're caring for the day. So I think 3 is fine. It's just like, I guess when I upload it into the Google Doc, you know, you're going to be like, why is this like biblical length? Why is it 400 pages? And just know that's why.
I knew that it was, Lisa. And you know,
Yeah.
I'm not.
I think we all know that it's like that in level 1, Lisa. Trust me, you're starting them off from nothing. So we appreciate you and your biblical length care plan.
Yeah, no, and I agree. I think it's okay. But I also think, you know, if you see opportunities where there's some things that maybe they don't have to copy down on paper to still be safe without seeing it and going through it, I don't know, but
and that's where you guys could share that feedback with me. Like, you know, from an upper level perspective, what maybe should we add that might prepare them a little better, or what are they stellar in that maybe we can back off, you know, a little in some areas. So
yeah, the idea of having it be consistent, like not consistent, but building from level to level, I think is a great idea. Yeah, I like that. I like that idea.
well, and I mean, and ultimately, you know, they get through level 1, 2, and 3, and then really in level 4, they don't have care plans, you know, in their preceptorship.
Which is why Esme isn't here, but I think there's a lot of opportunity in 425 too to do something like this, not to do a care plan, but maybe a write-up at midterm that is patient related, you know, maybe in addition to or in place of the reflection on the learning
Reflection, yeah,
right. And then at final, something like that, like nothing crazy, but still we're able to see, because I don't know how you guys feel when you're in 425. I have a difficult time sometimes like really evaluating where they're at clinically, because you're relying on reflection and on preceptor feedback, which can come in a variety of, you know, different lengths and just overall quality of the feedback. And so I think adding something like this and maybe subtracting something else might be helpful. But I think if we start it at 1, 2, and 3, and then we could move to 4 would be a good approach.
I have to say that I was really happy to hear Jay say that there are no questions on NCLEX anymore related to the nursing diagnosis. I was not aware of that. And I actually, in the past couple semesters, built in questions into my exams, you know, where I give them a nursing diagnosis and ask them, you know, what behavior would not support or would support or whatever. And so it was nice finding out that they're not there. But I guess my question would be, are they still in HESI?
No, they're not actually.
They're not.
So as what Angie said before, there's two school of thought. NCLEX, I would like to be very technical in saying it's not the nursing diagnosis they remove, it's the NANDA statement of the nursing diagnosis part. I just want to make sure I quantify, I'm sorry. You know, the alteration in comfort, you know, those things, that's not used. But students is still expected to identify the problem, the priority problem, but then minimize with that NANDA taxonomy of problems.
Not have to have
that's what I want to make
that
sure.
approved list.
Yes, that the use of that older taxonomy.
I think there was a cost
removing
concern. There was a cost concern with that, and basically NCSBN was going to be expected to pay to use terminology, and so they moved away from it. And the way that they still in a way kept it is that they revised it to say, instead of the specific words, just describing the health problem that they had, and then, you know, what options would be appropriate. And with the Saunders books, we had to go through and do all that. So anytime there was a nursing diagnosis question, we just reworded it to be talking about a health problem or a health promotion scenario. But it wasn't like huge heavy revision. So I would say same for your questions. You could just go in and frame it in that way. But I also am not like overly concerned, Missy, about that, just because generally the concepts are still the same at the end of the day.
And I mean, I think I only scatter like 1 or 2 in there. It's not like it's heavy based, you know, but
yeah. So good. What else are you guys thinking about?
I'm thinking that I'm stressed out and realizing that I'm old and stuck in my ways, because when you have your entire career, you're built on these stupid NANDA diagnoses and now they want to go away. I'm like,
this is what we do, I feel like, in nursing education. I know. That's what a lot of
waste so much time. Like because I've been here 11 years now, and I feel like I've changed things 3 different times and I'm kind of back where I started.
Yeah.
It's just a crazy evolution, how fast it changes, and like to be able to, you know, facilitate learning for the students good enough, we have to be able to switch on a dime with all of these changes. And that's really hard to let go, especially when you're so confident in like the way you're teaching them. And now I'm like, what am I going to do without my NANDA diagnoses? There goes like, whatever. I can do it. I can do it.
No, Lisa, I get what you're saying. And I think NCSBN, that you've noticed on their clinical judgment model, they still have nursing process underneath, because they don't want everybody to be upset, because a lot of people do see the value in the nursing process. And so I think you can still teach it. I think it's just that it doesn't support decision making enough. And so as long as we're incorporating this in another way and we're getting them to think, is really all that I think we need to make sure we're doing. As far as the NANDA book, you know, that might be something to think about. And like, to what extent do you want to emphasize nursing diagnosis? Do they need the book? And I think I wouldn't make any changes there until you've piloted new ways of doing things. But it's just something to think about for future.
Do you guys have them in the upper levels use that NANDA diagnosis book at all?
Yes, we still use it, because aside from that NANDA diagnosis of problems, Lisa, it is still a very, very important and very helpful book for their interventions, which in my case, and 313, I heavily focus on the interventions.
Okay.
You know, so that's why it's still very helpful. The ACLE is still very helpful. And to
Yeah.
add on your question, I think Angie is very clear with that too, that we don't get rid of nursing process. We just don't have to be our backbone is the nursing process. So I think that being said, I think you're still good, Lisa, to teach nursing process, but open up that this nursing process should bring you to a greater height, not just critical thinking, but decision making. Always have an open ending. And then I'll touch in level 2, how the nursing process leads you to clinical judgment. You know, because they need the basis, and the theory is nursing process still, but the fruit should be clinical judgment. Then I could pick up from you so that they don't miss out the process, but build on the process into the clinical judgment for the rest of the later, levels.
Absolutely.
And Lisa, I don't think we should get rid of that book, to be honest. I think the students, I don't specifically refer to it or use it, but I know the students still use it when they're doing care plans for me. And so I think that it's a good resource for them, kind of like, the Evolve book that sometimes they forget they have. And then we're like, hey, use the book. And they're like, oh, yes. So I think if we get rid of that book eventually, then we should be replacing it with something that's a clinical judgment model book, something that's a resource, because I think they do use it way more than they talk about it with us.
Okay.
And I agree too. It's really good for the intervention piece, and also what parameters they'd be looking at for evaluating. And there's a lot of really great aspects of it. So
Yes.
we have to find a way, which I think you kind of did, if I recall. You found a way to integrate clinical judgment with nursing process for your care plans. Am I remembering that right, Lisa?
Yes. So we talk about the nursing process as 5 steps, but now, I call it nursing process on steroids. And so anytime they hear, let's talk about the steroid version, they know to give me those 6 cognitive skills of the clinical judgment model. And that's what we really focus on. What part of this case study or this patient we're taking care of do we need to recognize cues? What do those cues mean for this patient? So we use that primarily, but it's always in conjunction with the nursing process. So if they ever see analysis or planning, they know what steps of the clinical judgment model, they kind of align with. And so that's what the paperwork has is both of them, like a subheading of nursing process, and then that clinical judgment model with it.
Well, I'm getting very excited to look at the paperwork, because the one page that I have them do related to the nursing diagnoses, I want to seriously stab myself every semester with the related to and as evidenced by, because they don't understand it and I'm over it.
Yeah, that's exactly the part of the nursing process in NANDA that I don't like, is when it gets down to semantics, and it's like, but how does this make them a safer nurse, right? And so
Exactly.
yeah.
So you actually I'm very excited to see your guys' paperwork to delete that sheet out of my very slimmed down paperwork and add it to something that doesn't have related to and as evidenced by.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm going to set up the Google Drive now after we get off. I'll put in, Jay, I've got the 313 right here, so I'm just going to throw that in for us. And then the blank form will be there. Lisa, you're going to upload yours. I'll have all the folders laid out. Lisa, I always ask you to do things, but I don't think you'll mind because you're going to do it anyways. Can you let us know how it goes with your revised version of the paperwork? Could you maybe give us a report at the end of the semester, or talk about it in debrief or something like that?
Of course.
Jay, are you having any of your faculty use this version of it yet, or is it still being worked on?
Yeah, not yet. I'm working on that's why I want to get an exemplar out from it too.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll have Lisa report to us on what's working, what's not working, and then we can, as a whole, maybe start to pilot something for fall.
And I was going to ask, after we come up with whatever we're piloting, if we could then meet again at the end of fall, beginning of summer, because my concern is that maybe I think I've created this great and wonderful thing and it really just kind of sucks. And there's a better way that somebody else has done it. or vice versa, you know.
Right,
But
right.
if we could just follow up again, you know, even if it's the beginning of next year after we've ran these through clinical at least once.
Agree.
Let's,
Yeah.
I agree.
So
Will
what-
we be able to see in the other folders, like for instance, what Lisa's going to start using? Will we be able to see what she's using to kind of use it as a you know,
a template, an example.
yeah, template for
Yeah,
ours?
I'll make sure everybody has access to all the folders. And thank you all for being willing to share. I think it's very helpful. So, okay, so for a follow-up, what are you guys thinking again? Tell me again what you're thinking for a follow-up meeting.
Between fall and spring, Nicole, right after we've done.
Yeah, and I'm kind of thinking more like January-ish, maybe somewhere, because you know how we all get at the end of the year related to the holidays. Maybe we're not so focused, but I'm good there too. But just before
What
that,
about like during
please stop
planning?
making faces at me.
Yeah, let's do sometime during planning week that week.
Because that would be in January, right?
Yes, it is. And Nicole, you probably don't know about like events for that yet, right? Those haven't been planned for like faculty development and stuff like that.
Let me look.
It seems like in the past, Mondays and Fridays are the least busiest days.
Yeah.
They
Well,
seem
we
to throw
start-
Wednesdays and Thursdays into us a lot.
We start really early. Is the spring semester the 4th, the 3rd, or something crazy like that, or is it the week after?
Planning week starts on Tuesday, the 3rd. It's the 3rd through the 6th. And then week 1 starts on the 9th, Monday.
Okay.
Yeah, we haven't scheduled anything out, but when we move forward with scheduling like the lecture series and stuff like that, they're always going to be on Monday afternoons.
Okay, right. Yeah, that's true.
So, because that's when most faculty we've already agreed that we would be available at that time. So, and typically if we do anything big on planning week, it's the Wednesday or the Thursday. So I know Tuesday is pretty.
Do we want to go same time as this meeting on Tuesday, the 3rd? For now?
Sure.
Should we make it a little longer, or do we think an hour is okay? I'm gonna call it clinical judgment. I'm gonna put some notes in here. So when you guys click on the invite, you'll see the notes. So what we're gonna bring to that meeting is, what are we gonna bring to that meeting? We're gonna talk about feedback from clinical courses that have piloted.
Student examples.
Will we have piloted at that point? We will, right? So examples plus how it went. Examples of new clinical paperwork, feedback from clinical courses that have piloted clinical paperwork. Okay. Because we're going to get to this, we're going to be like, what is this? What are we doing for this meeting? Okay, so that Nicole, Missy, Lisa, Jay, Kayla. I think I'm gonna ask Esme to do that too. Yeah, we didn't have her come this time, Jay, because they don't use care plans in 425.
Oh, okay.
But with that said, we want to start doing something in 425. So what do you guys think? An hour and a half? Just to be on the safe side. Is that okay with everybody?
I think hour and a half would be appropriate and sufficient.
Okay, great. So am I missing anybody? I have Lisa for level 1. I have Jay. I'm going to add Minnie. I don't know if she's going to be clinical coordinator at that time, but we will see. I have Kayla, Nicole, Missy, and then Esme. It's everybody, I think. All right. So anything else? think this was very productive. I thank you guys very much for your willingness to make some revisions, and we wanted to do this earlier, but because of COVID, here we are. But I think we're doing really good. So, all right, if there's nothing else, I think we can move on to the next. I will do the Google Drive right now.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Angie, do you have a minute? I have a couple questions not related to this, but while I have you.
Yeah, absolutely. Sounds good. Thanks,
Be
Nicole.
okay to leave?
You're okay. Yeah. Thank you, Jay, for coming
Okay.
on.
Thank you. Thank
Bye.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye,
Bye.
Lisa.
I just had a question. Roseanne had reached out to me the other day about we're going to be redoing the whole DEU to I wrote down what she said, innovative clinical.
Clinical innovation coordinator. I think
Yes.
what we thought would be a better fit for what's going on with.
Well, especially since, you know, we have very few units that are even
Right.
operating as actual DEUs right now.
Exactly. Yeah.
So she was just telling me that as it gets revamped, it will go back out for bidding for coordinators and.
Yeah. That piece of it, I kind of left to her and Mary and the leadership team to decide. Oh, hang on. Let me stop recording.